New York's classic rock, Q1043.
Good morning. I say good morning to a true rock star, Serj Tankian, Grammy-winning lead singer of System of a Down, and his documentary, actually a documentary about him, his life, his passions, called Truth to Power. You can now see virtual theater. Go to truthtopowerfilm.com, and then you'll see how you can view this really just, for me, it was an educational film. It taught me a lot of history, not just your history, but Armenian history. So System of a Down, first of all, is one of the few all Armenian-American groups, one of the most unlikely groups to become such a popular rock group. And your whole passion, your whole drive came from your culture, your family history, that you wanted to get the United States to formally recognize the Armenian massacre. Serj, what was the earliest memory that you can think of where you knew this was part of your family history?
My grandparents, all four of them, were survivors of the genocide. And, they basically told us their stories once we were old enough of how their family perished and how they survived and all of those stories. And living in a well-known democracy like the US, where, the formal recognition of the genocide was put aside out of political expediency, having, with a NATO ally like Turkey, economic reasons, selling them helicopters, etc. It made me an activist because I realized that there are many other truths out there that are not properly recognized because someone's making money or there's some type of geopolitical gain for the US. And that truly made me an activist at a very young age, in my teens, I would say.
You initially were not going to go into music. You were actually studying to go into law when you basically had a meltdown and an epiphany at the same time. Tell us about that.
Yeah, unlike my bandmates and most musicians that I've known who start at the age of 7 or 8 to dedicate themselves to their instrument and music, I didn't have that kind of experience. I actually, my experience, I didn't really get into music until university when I started playing a keyboard, and I was studying business. I got a, degree in marketing from Cal State Northridge here in Southern California. And it's, I didn't really take music as my career choice until somewhere in my 20s. And that epiphany is shown in the film very correctly. And it's quite amazing how those life experiences mold who you are. Every life experiences molds who you are.
Getting back to just the name of your group, I mean, it's basically bringing down a system. How did you decide on System of a Down? And was that your call? Was it a joint call with everyone in the group?
Our guitarist Darren Malakian had a poem called "Victims of a Down," and we thought the word "victims" was, a negative connotation, and so we kind of changed that to "system," and that's where the name of the group comes from.
And do you think just by the name of the group that, people would Google that, look for that, fans, and start learning the history?
No.
Of what you're all about?
No, not really. I mean, I think it's the, the work, we toured, we were a band,
No. I mean, just the, getting to your passions politically, not the music at all.
Right. Even that was a dissemination that happened over time in terms of the awareness. I was an activist before becoming an artist. So for me, the storyline of the film is basically that of an activist through the arts, and seeing an activist at a young age who had a very small voice, not a projected voice, and then through the band and through the success of the band and music had a larger voice and an impact. And we can see the results of that impact, both positive and negative, throughout the film, which is interesting.
What was fascinating to me was, first of all, System of a Down performing for the first time in Armenia in 2015. That was one moment. But what we learn a little bit later in the film is that there was somebody in the audience, and that was 50,000 strong, right?
Mhm.
50,000 people coming out to see you. So there was somebody in that audience who was ultimately ended up being a member of a very corrupt government. But he was inspired from your 2015 concert to really lead a peaceful revolution. So you, Serj Tankian, are part of a peaceful revolution. How many people can say that and explain everything that I'm talking about here? Because you lived it, and it's just extraordinary.
Look, Shelley, I've always been critical of injustice and hypocrisy, whether it's in the US, whether it's in other countries in the world. And so I didn't really, so I didn't have a problem criticizing the post-Soviet oligarchic corrupt policies of at the time, the Armenian government, and wrote open letters to the president at the time when he got reelected in 2013 and whatnot. So I was always trying to help people find justice in that country or elsewhere. And the particular event you're talking about is in 2015 on April 21st at the 100th year commemoration of the Armenian Genocide, where System of a Down for the first time played in Armenia. We broadcasted that through rollingstone.com so the world could see. And it was just an incredible event, an incredible show. And among the people there, I learned later, was the current Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, who led the Velvet Revolution of 2018, a peaceful revolution to change Armenia into a more progressive democracy. And beyond the show itself, though I've been very involved in the kind of day-to-day activism of, not just the country, but the movement itself, and went to Armenia at the tail end of the revolution. And it was just incredible, an incredible feeling. You'll see, obviously you see it in the film, the faces of elation after the revolution. Unfortunately,
but here's a man who basically started the revolution by walking across the country in peaceful protest, saying, if you want any violence, you're not with us. Do not join us. We want peaceful change. But it started with just a few people walking, and it became this movement. I mean, just imagine this happening in this country, this walking across the country, picking up more and more supporters. I didn't have any idea this happened, Serj.
Right. We have an incredible other film called I Am Not Alone. That's an award-winning film that's coming out this year that specifically documents the 2018 Armenian Velvet Revolution and the incredible, almost accidental learning of something called decentralized civil disobedience, that if used is a potent weapon for democracy and protest around the world. We've been trying to get this film out for a number of years. We've won about 10 or 12 film festival awards. It's an incredible film, and you'll be able to see it soon. But yeah, I think, look, it was a very unique thing that occurred, unfortunately bringing us up to date now, which I have to, because of the last year on September 27, the combined forces of Azerbaijan and Turkey, along with Syrian mercenaries, attacked Armenian enclave of Artsakh, the independent Republic of Artsakh. And there were a lot of deaths. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of anger, a lot of displaced people, and a humanitarian catastrophe that was thrown upon this government post-revolution. So they started a very peaceful revolution, but got handed a very unpeaceful, extremely horrible war 2.5 years later. So the country is really, really in a very grieving, difficult time right now. So it's interesting to talk about the revolution in a positive light, and yet we're here in a very negative light in the current state of Armenia.
I'm speaking with Serj Tankian, Grammy-winning lead singer and founder of System of a Down, and his documentary, which you can now see, Virtual Theater, You can find out how to see that. Go online, truthtopowerfilm.com. Tell us now about your joint effort with Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine and Access of Justice. What was that all about? And are you still involved in this, both of
Right.
you?
Tom and I have been friends for a long time. At the time, we were both going to be doing an Ozfest tour when he was just starting Audio Slave with our mutual friend Chris Cornell, and it turned out that they weren't able to do Ozfest, but he had an idea of basically bringing activism to hard rock and metal shows in the form of a nonprofit organization that would disseminate information in the same way that different booths at the concerts, sold T-shirts and different merchandise items. And so we started Access of Justice as a way of bringing to, different nonprofit organizations to music and concert goers and bringing more justice in that way to that world. We had a radio show called the Access of Justice Radio Network for many, many years on the Pacifica Radio Network in the US on KPFK. And the organization is not very active right now. We've both kind of been doing our own thing in terms of activism, but we did join forces for a long time. He's still a friend. He's in the film. I'm actually doing an Instagram live with him in a few days, and I'm inspired by Tom's activism and his hardworking ethics having to do with his activism.
So, what are you doing in terms of activism now? What are your passions?
Because of what happened in Armenia, I've been really, really focused on the humanitarian fallout of post-war. So along with System of a Down, we've organized a fundraiser. We've raised about 700,000 that we've donated through the Armenia Fund, which is the largest Armenian nonprofit in the world, earmarked toward 3 different nonprofit organizations that are doing prosthetic limb, for young soldiers that lost their limbs from the war, from basically drone attacks, and also bringing laser therapy to Armenia for those young soldiers that have scar tissue and burning from white phosphorus banned weapons that Azerbaijan used during the war. So those have been primarily the recent kind of activism-based work. It's mostly been fundraising, and along with System of a Down, we put out 2 songs that we donated to the Armenia Fund and the effort to help bring humanitarian aid to Armenia.
This is going to sound like a strange question, but has anyone else ever told you that you remind them of Frank Zappa? And I don't mean physically.
Yeah. I get that all the time. I used to get it more often, actually, when I had a full beard and longer kind of noodly hair. But yeah, thank you. And that's a huge compliment. I love Zappa. I got to visit his studio when Gail, his wife, was still alive, and actually shot some footage that we didn't know what we were going to do with Truth to Power. I've been shooting footage for many years. So part of that process was also getting these incredible opportunities to talk to people about incredible artists that had an impact. And so because of the idea of this film, I got to visit Gail and see his studio and learn more about him, which was incredible.
Well, because he was part of a peaceful revolution as well, you know? I almost feel like that there's a part of him in you. I know that sounds strange. All right. Now, how have you been doing with the pandemic? What are you binging anything on TV? Tell us.
Pandemic's been great. I'm grateful. We live between New Zealand and the US. I'm in the US now, but we were in New Zealand the majority of the time during the pandemic in 2020, where it's, the New Zealand government handled it incredibly well, and therefore it was pretty much back to normal in a few months there. They're having a small recurrence now with a few cases, but they know what they're doing. Then came back to LA later in the year last year. The pandemic, like everyone else, it was devastating in many ways. I had 22 concerts with System, 2 film openings, 2 art installation openings, all got canceled. But I used the time to finish new music, which was good as an artist. So we were releasing this EP called Elasticity with 5 rock songs on March 19th as part of that. And I have some other music coming out later in the year down the line.
Okay, thank you so much. Serj Tankian, Grammy-winning lead singer of System of a Down, and the documentary about him and his passions, and it's so educational and inspiring. Go to truthtopowerfilm.com and you will learn how to see this in virtual theater. Q104.3.
New York's classic rock, Q1043.